Hello, company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft, covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and of course, always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keates. I'm a director and your host. Today's guest is a British actor who originated the role of Cosmo in a Pitchfork Disney at the Bush Theatre and went on to play Tony in Channel 4's Desmond's. He has spent the past 25 years in Los Angeles appearing in notable American television series and films, including Star Trek Enterprise, Heroes, Prison Break, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Beowulf, Jungle to Jungle, and many others. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Dominic Keating.
Hey, he's back.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Andrew. It's good to be here.
It's lovely to have you on. Coming up on today's show, on the Soapbox, we'll be discussing whether the grass is really greener for actors in Los Angeles. I'll be getting my theatrical tips out of things to see in May 2018.
Did you say tips?
I did say tips.
You did.
I know you're a big...
His diction is good, sir.
Big fan of theatrical tips, is Dominic Keating. On the platform, we have new music written by Alexis Jared, and I'll be interviewing Dominic Keating all about his life, career, and setting him some infamous Show People challenges too. You're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates and Dominic Keating. Who is he? Marvellous. Well, hello, mate.
Hello, mate.
Thank you for coming and doing this for me.
Thank you for having me on. It's a delight to be here.
So, what have you been up to in the UK? What brings you over?
I'm actually here shooting a movie. It's a pretty good script called Amsterdam Secrets that took me by surprise. The first 60 pages was this very exciting film and socio-drama about a young man's life. And then, not to give too much away, spoiler alert, it becomes quite another movie entirely. But I've got a nice little sort of, cameo in it, playing the young man's bank manager where he works before he gets embroiled in all sorts of trouble. I shall say no more.
And
so Derek Jacobi's in it, though.
Derek Jacobi?
I just heard that yesterday. Yeah. I share something in common with Derek Jacobi, actually, and I wished I'd seen him on set because I would have gone over. I recently became the fourth actor in all of human history to record the Iliad.
I remember you were doing that. How many pages?
It was 20, I think it's 27,000 lines.
27.
I did in 10 days, dude.
Did you enjoy it though?
Yeah, it was, bloody hard work. It was without doubt one of the greatest challenges of my acting career. Yeah. The young man that led me and held my hand up the mountain, Philip Miller, God bless you, big shout out to Philip Miller. He's an amazing audio sound recordist. He two of his favourite things in all of his life are dressing up as pirates and the Iliad. I kid you not. It's a brand new world.
Well,
he was delighted, and it was a hell of a thing. We cried at the end. I got not to get too emotional, but yeah, when we read those last three lines and it was done. And I said, "Eat your bloody heart out," said Derek Jacobi.
But I mean, it is what it says. It's an odyssey. I mean, it
was something else.
It's enormous. It's a story of epic
I'd never read
proportions.
it, and I went in blind, and literally it unfolded before me as I was reading it. And but I did a very good job, if I dare say myself. I got 5 stars on Audible.com.
And not only that,
you can get it on iTunes, people.
Get it on iTunes, Dominic Keating, the
Iliad. Yes.
And you've also, I didn't realise about you, is you've been recording various games, as in some quite famous
some pretty big ones along the way. I've done the Call of Duty stuff. I'm the mad scientist, which is a notable part in the Black Ops one, which I think also stars Gary Oldman, if I'm not mistaken.
Whatever happened to him?
Whatever happened to him? And then I've done a big voice for Blizzard. I do a lot of stuff for Blizzard Entertainment, who are one of the big boys in the industry. I am the Templar in Diablo, and I do various voices on their World of Warcraft game, which I'm going to do another one in a couple of weeks, actually, while I'm here.
Yeah, because from what I understood, you were in such demand from it that was it the LA office, because you've been over here working, sorted out your recording studio especially for London?
Second time they've done it for me, God bless. No, lovely lady, Andrea Torres. Big shout out to Andrea. She loves me, God bless her. And she organises a place in Soho Square I go to, and I stay up a little later. Like, I record at 7 o'clock at night and It's lunchtime in LA, and
they direct literally from LA to London.
Like we're sitting here. I've just got Andrea in my ear. Yeah,
blimey,
it's amazing. Brand new world, isn't it?
Well, for anybody who's listening to the show that might not necessarily know everything that you've been doing, because of course you've been in LA for 25 years.
I have. Isn't that some man and boy? It's incredible. I can't believe that it's been 25 years. But I went out in 2 days after the Northridge earthquake, which was the big last one we've had. So
you're getting up for another one.
I'm selling up and getting out. Everyone I'd met on that recce, I went out just before that Christmas in 94, so it was the end of 93. And I met a ton of English people and, thought, why don't I come back? I think I should, I was of an age where I didn't have any, wasn't emotionally connected in England. I had a flat I could rent out and then, what do you know? This bloody earthquake. I mean, I'd rented my apartment in London. I'd sent a beach buggy that I owned through the Panama Canal, which was going to be my LA. I still have that beach buggy. I pushed that round LA like my career, let me tell you. And LA was in flames. I watched it from my mum's little black and white telly in her kitchen in Leicester. And it was like, oh, God. And sure as SH1T, the place was in turmoil when I got there. The 10 freeway, which is the busiest road in the world, was completely down.
It's terrifying.
It was something else.
It's like a disaster movie.
And everyone I met that was English was literally packing their suitcases to go home. We're done. That's it.
Back to Croydon.
Yeah, They'll take Croydon. I had a couple of the aftershocks in that first 5 days of being there. I mean, I think the largest one I went through was a 5.7. The house shakes, dude. I mean, it really. I did everything you're not meant to do and screaming from the breakfast table like a mad woman, like a banshee. But it's frightening. I mean, you can literally feel the house and the ground underneath you veritably moving.
Well, I know an earthquake is a terrifying thing, but not as terrifying as a Show People podcast challenge. Dominic Keating, I have a copy of your CV in front of me. I would like to challenge you to remember every single credit you can possibly remember within 60 seconds. Let's see what you can go back. Let's visit memory lane. Dominic Keating. Let's play the Show People podcast CV challenge. Any credit you want to start with?
Best years of your life. Amongst Barbarians, Screamers, Desmond's, something at the Library Theatre, Amongst Barbarians, Pitchfork Disney, CSI New York, Buffy, Star Trek, Beowulf, come on, Dom, Prison Break,
film you were telling me about the other day.
Maternal Instincts. What's this one called? Amsterdam Secrets. Crikey. Jungle to Jungle. God, there's just, you go, who the hell have I worked with? Other plays. World of Warcraft. Can you do voiceovers? Is it a minute? That's got to be enough for me.
That's 1 minute. So there's a few things we've missed out on. Some things that I do know, some that I haven't. I mean, you've missed off probably your greatest triumph. Let's not forget you were Murray Stone in Inspector Morse.
I was in Inspector. Bless.
And several episodes of The Bill.
Oh God, I did once a year. They literally you could do that show once every year. Every 2 days before my year was up, they'd ring up my agent here, Roxanne Vacker, and go, "We've got another villain for Keating." I think I did it about 5 times in the end.
Yeah, I've got it here, doing The Bill from 1989 to 1992, including Friend 2.
Yes, that was my first TV job.
Patrick Litton and Andrew Jensen.
I have that letter. It's in my loo in my flat in London. Dear Dominic Keating, we are delighted that you will be playing Second Friend. Not as delighted as me. Are people quite good at remembering all their credits?
No, they're always terrible.
Yeah.
What's amazing, though, is people remember all the obscure things and then they forget the biggest jobs that they've ever done. Yeah. That's the funniest thing, or their most favourite project.
I noticed in the doing of that, there was a moment where I can't possibly say that. I thought, no, wait a minute, it's a point.
Well, I'm going to be talking to Dominic Keating all about his life and career. But before we do that, we'll be delving into the soapbox, the part of the show where we discuss an industry issue. We'll be talking to Dominic about, is the grass really greener in LA?
Hello, this is Rufus Hound, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. But the real question is, what are you doing while you're listening? Stop touching that, you filthy bastard.
Thank you, Mr. Hound. Well, it's time for the soapbox, the part of the show where we discuss an industry issue. And today's topic is something my guest knows a very great deal about. And that's whether or not the grass is actually greener by heading out to Los Angeles and leaving British theatre and British film, TV, etc. behind. Dominic, take me back. So you had some wonderful plays. You had Desmond's, a TV show, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
What was it that made you go, LA's where I need to be?
A chick.
Really? Was it really?
Well, no, yes and no. I mean, there's often a girl involved, isn't there? I went out ostensibly on a holiday. A dear friend of mine who I'd met when I was 21, after having graduated, I got invited to go down the Nile with. It was actually my mother's first cousin by marriage, but she was kind of like an aunt to me. And I met this fantastic American boy, Mike Franzia, whose family owned a fat vineyard out there. His granddad, I think, sold Ernst Gallo the first plot of land that they put their grapes on. So they go back in Northern California. And I went out to see Mike and go and stay with him. And then his younger brother was getting married, and there was a bachelor party in Vegas. So I went to Vegas for the first time. That's a whole nother story. And then I hitched a ride to Los Angeles, and I knew one actress that I'd met when I got started as an actor in London, who was living out in LA. And she very kindly put me up. I arrived in town the night River Phoenix died, and she literally lived up Horn Avenue, which is at the bottom of Horn Avenue and Sunset is where Tower Records is, the world-famous Tower Records, which is still there, although nothing but a billboard and an empty shop right now.
How sad.
And across the road is the Viper Room, where dear River was, getting too messed up that night, and I think he died around the corner at the Bellagio Hotel is it the Bellagio? I think it is. It's a well-known hotel just down off Sunset there where a lot of partying used to go on. Yeah. Anyway, so I stayed with Helen, and I was in town about 3 weeks. My second night in LA at the Rainbow, which is another sort of big music industry hangout, I met Dabney Coleman's daughter. Now, Dabney is pretty well-known actor in the States, but you will remember him. He played the nasty boss in 9 to 5 with Dolly Parton.
I was just thinking who was it?
Pencil moustache. Yeah. He had several sitcoms of his own in the States. He was more recently in Boardwalk Empire. He got a sort of very late reprise in his career. He was a charming man. His best friend was Harry Dean Stanton. And I was suddenly at this industry hangout called Dan Tanner's, which is a big, little place on Santa Monica Boulevard, industry restaurant. It was owned by a man called Dan Tanner, who had been a 70s cop on TV, and he put his money into a restaurant. Dabney was a fixture there. He had the Coleman steak on the menu. He had his own booth table. It was it still is a classic LA restaurant with red leather booths and
everything you see in the movies.
And there's Harry Dean Stanton sitting next to me, and I'm hanging out there with Kelly and her dad, and meeting the world. I mean, Nick Cage came over one night and sat with us, and Harry's going, "You got a good look, kid. You should get back here." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I should."
And what was it? I mean, did you not find yourself going, I'm surrounded by Americans. No offense to Americans, but what a culture shock. Had you been to America before?
I have been to America a lot in my life. I first went over as a 16-year-old with I had one of the advantaged backgrounds of going to a boys' boarding school, and they had an extracurriculum activity. That was the theatre there at Uppingham is second to none. I think it might still be the largest privately owned theatre in the world. And the man there, Chris Richardson, who ran that theatre, we took Shakespeare. Let me tell that. The first year we went out, there was a play about our school, and we did a couple of smaller plays. I remember one, there was a beautiful Ray Bradbury piece that we took called Kaleidoscope. And we visited similar sort of prep schools along the East Coast, from as far north as Maine all the way almost to Washington. Actually, we did go to Washington, D.C. So I'd been to New York as a 16-year-old. The next time I went, we snuck in to see Saturday Night Fever in Times Square when it was Times Square. And changed my life, that did. I came home with a pair of white strides, the double album, and a hairdryer. All my friends were getting into punk and bondage, and I'm like, no fucking way.
No, I need some Brill cream.
Yeah.
I mean, what was...
So I loved America. It's short stories, and I love traveling. And a lot of people who do go out to LA, yeah, you're right. They come and go. It doesn't suit them. It's not for everyone. And if you stick with your British sensibility, you are going to find this place a very, very queer animal. Yeah,
and tell me about that. So that old song, An Englishman in New York. I mean, what's it like to be an Englishman in LA? What were the big changes culturally that took you a while to adjust to as an actor?
As an actor, I tell you, just going into the audition room and there's no introduction. They might say your name. They probably won't. And back in those days, there would be people in the room, and it would be live, and they'd be all the decision makers. And there's no big sort of glad handing, handshaking. What have you been up to? Like you do in England. When I came back once and I got cast in Casualty, it was Holby City. Quite by chance, I just happened to be back and I'd not worked in the UK for a long time. And my agent just said, there's a part on Holby that you're perfect for, but they do want to see you. So I went all the way out to Elstree or wherever they shoot. Oh, my word, for a guest star role. So we sat down, and this very nice Scottish BBC director, we all stood up and they all shook my hand. And then we all sat down, and then he's talking about this role in the show. And I was like, eventually I said, well, why don't we just sort of get it up on its feet and have a look at it? And he looked at me and went, so another thing about Roger, the part, was like, and I was like, oh my. And then at the end of the audition, we all stood up again and shook hands. It was like a cocktail party. That doesn't happen in LA.
Well, do you know what you say that? Obviously, from my perspective as a British theatre director, all I want to do is make sure that actor is prepared and knows they're respected from the moment they come in, whether they're right or wrong for the part.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen.
So I suppose the difference in respect and politeness is like that.
It's pretty great. I mean, look, I certainly wouldn't. I'm not advocating the the Los Angelian system. It's you're just another plumber in Plummersville, honey. Yeah.
And it really is the town where it is saturated with the entertainment industry.
Oh, it's a one-horse town in that respect, literally. I mean, I'll tell. So when I did the Star Trek show, and I bought the house that Trek built.
Yes.
God bless him.
To go with the flat that Vidal Sassoon bought, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, the wash and go flat here in London.
That's it.
Thank you. I call that one wash and go out of respect. So I had some plumbing work needed doing, and God bless this African American guy, big. If you were going to cast a plumber from Central Casting, you would have gone with this guy. So he came round, and on the third visit, he had a script in his hand. When he realized who I was and the show I was on, and could you think you could get this script to somebody at Paramount? And
did you pass it on?
It was a sci-fi. I read 4 pages.
I've got
sorry, Wilbur. And but that is. I mean, the cliche of that town is that every waiter that's waiting your table is likely going to class, and
And what advice would you give to? There are, of course, many actors and indeed creatives that are thinking about uphauling and trying to make it in LA rather than in London. What advice would you give them?
Don't. Stay home. What advice? I mean, in this day and age, and it wasn't easy back when I went 25 years ago, but getting legal so you can work that's a thing. And it's a hell of a thing now. I mean, the Trump administration is not bending over backwards to, bring anybody in.
Mm-hmm.
The twist in the loophole is the legal loophole is that if you can show extraordinary ability, is what it's legally known as, and you can get enough producers, directors, and industry, bigwigs to say, if you were given the opportunity to work with Dominic Keating, we would love to. Mm-hmm. You stand a good chance. And in my case, I'd kept all my theatre reviews, God bless, and it was literally those, and the fact that I'd done something like a Sassoon commercial and made some money, and been on a TV show. I had enough. I didn't know that I'd had enough, but the lawyer I had, who was he's since passed on, dear Ralph Aaron Price, any English actor who knows LA will have probably heard that name in his journey, or her journey, trying to get legal. Yeah, he was the go-to guy at that time. When I told Ralph about my career, I took a girl to the first interview. And because if it didn't work out, I said, we love each other and we will be married in Vegas next week. I was serious about getting it done. So, I told my story, and Ralph brought his two legal cohorts in, and he asked me to tell the story again. And then he did play this funny game where we all wrote percentage chances of what we thought my chances of getting a green card were. Me included. Yeah. And he screwed them up, and we put them in, he jumbled them up on the table on his desk, and then he opened them up, and one of them was like 97%. I was like, great. Oh my word. Great. And then a 96 and a 93, and then there was a 22. And that was Rachel. Yeah. I was looking at $5,000. I promised her to get married. Anyway, I'm a citizen now, so I can say all this and not in fear of being thrown out.
And the thing I didn't realize so much, obviously LA, we think of Hollywood, we think of the TV and the film industry. I didn't realize that LA has actually got plenty of theatres.
Oh, yes, hundreds. And several big ones from back in the day when, and they're still very much attended. I mean, they really are. Pantages around the corner from where I live, that gets all the big musicals. Hamilton's just come there from New York. And then the Armanson, the Mark Taper downtown. I mean, downtown has become that Grand Avenue with the Disney Hall, and that's a civic center, mecca now. It's so there's, and then around town because there are so many actors who are essentially out of work in the main industry, which is TV and film. There's just a slew of theatres, and some of them are, really good. There's a lot of theatre companies, and they do really good work, and they're well attended.
And if you had your time again, would you, looking back all those years ago when you decided to go out to LA, would you still go?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me if I'd do the acting thing. No, I wouldn't.
Wouldn't you?
No, would I? No, I would go. LA's been amazing to me. My story, the other way around, I don't know of many of an American actor who thinks he's going to come to London and make it big. Yeah. And I didn't do too badly in the States. And, my American dream, I mean, it worked out, thank God. I mean, people asked me when I finally got that Star Trek gig and we signed that 7-year contract and, are you excited? And I was more relieved, frankly. I'd been there 7 or 8 years, seven and a half. I'd been knocked on a lot of doors. I was getting a momentum going. I was a working actor. I didn't have to work in bars anymore and the like. But it was definitely what I call single white man living, Yeah. No dependence.
Did you spend some time in a commune when you first got there, didn't you?
I did. I spent my first 2 years on a commune in Malibu, the last bastion of hippiedom in the Western world, called The Ranch. It was fantastic. Best 2 years of my life.
It sounds like LA has just been full of adventures.
It really has. I mean, and then getting to work at Paramount for those years, and we shot on stages that, Hitchcock shot Rear Window on. They shot Sunset Boulevard there. My trailer, if I looked out of my window, opened my door, that balcony veranda where William Holden goes to visit the secretary, that was that office right there.
It's just remarkable.
And I walked through what's called the Godfather Alley every morning from the car park to my trailer, where Duval went out in The Godfather to go persuade the producer to put Johnny Fontaine in the picture. And they shot it in that alleyway there at Paramount with the water tower in the background. And I pinch myself every day.
Would you say that from being LA, that's what really funneled you into television and film and away from, and again, we'll when we go back and talk about how you started, was it LA that focused you on the film and TV industry away from your already very successful theatre career before you left? Is that just something that LA does to actors?
That's why I went. I mean,
Sure.
I didn't go to LA to be a theatre actor. You know?
I see.
No, I went there to see if I could become a movie star. In some respects, I guess, full disclosure.
Yeah.
I think any actor would be lying if you don't start out in this industry with those dreams as big as that. Kind of don't do it. But no, I went there definitely with trying to get a Hollywood career. So,
And what do you lose, though, compared to Britain? What do you lose
your
working in
soul.
LA? Really? Really?
A little bit. I think LA will take a piece of you. She's a fickle mistress. To refer back to being a plumber in Plummersville. I mean, you are. And if you're at a dinner party in Los Angeles and you say, "I'm an actor," unless your face is pretty much immediately recognizable, you really are just another plumber.
That cutthroat.
Oh yeah. Oh hell. And I'm sugarcoating it a little. Yeah, really. I mean, it's almost to the point where you'll just see their face glaze over, because if they don't recognize you off the TV or a film they've seen, you're just nobody. Yeah. So now here in London, you have at a dinner party and you say you're an actor, but whoa, really? Is there anything I would have seen you in? And then you knock off a couple of... The British accent helps a bit in LA. It used to 20 years ago. I mean, it was a lot more powerful. There are hordes of us there now. I mean, the young people go over now for a few months during the sort of what is still called pilot season. It kind of doesn't exist anymore, but January, February, March, April. The old expression: if you haven't booked a show by the end of April, you're probably not going to work this year.
No.
You might get a couple of guest stars, but now they just go over, for literally 6 to 9 weeks and see if they can snag something. And
some do.
And some do. It's the whole industry's become way more global, and with everything so technological now, you can send audition tapes, and they don't even want to see you half the time until it's time to actually just give you the job. So.
And how would it work with an actor? If, say, a young actor wants to go over and they can get seen by, I don't know, 2 or 3 possible pilots, etc. If they're cast and they don't have a green card or they don't have a visa, is that something the studio looks after, or is that entirely up to the actor to sort out beforehand?
The studio, depending on the size of the job. If it's a big ass movie, yeah, they'll go all. If they like you enough and they're going to make a star out of you, if you will, yeah, they'll go all out, and they can swing that for you. I tell most people that come over now, if you're coming out here and you expect to get an agent who's going to send you up for guest star roles, and forget it. It's not going to happen.
Because you just haven't got the paperwork in place.
It's pointless.
It's a waste of time.
These things get cast overnight. And and don't think you're going to come here for 3 weeks and walk home with an agent, a manager, and unless you're coming from some fat job in England that can catapult you into that arena with proper management that has relationships now with Los Angelian agencies. Unless you're flying at that level,
not a chance.
Don't waste your time or money.
Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, don't go to LA. But I will be talking to Dominic all about his life and career. But what do you think? I'd love to hear from you. Have you had terrible experiences working in other countries, or are you somebody that absolutely adores LA and has managed to, like Dominic, be able to be fortunate enough to work both in the UK and in America? Don't forget, you can tweet the show at ShowPeopleUK and #ShowPeoplePodcast, or you can join the Show People Podcast podcast listeners forum at facebook.com/showpeoplepodcast. Give the page a like and join in the conversation, as if we don't talk about these things, well, we can't change them or know about them.
Hi, this is Annette Badland, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
Well, Mr. Keating, let's start at the very beginning. Where were you born?
I got a very kind offer from...
Where did you... I listeners listening to this, we are both good friends, so it is quite weird sometimes when I find myself asking questions that I, of course, know the answer to. But tell me about where you grew up and what a young whippersnapper Dominic Keating was like.
I was a bit of a tearaway, I believe, so my mother said. I nearly killed her in childbirth, and you tried ever since, boy.
Gosh. It's literally Shakespearean tragedy.
She had me late. I was born and bred in Leicester. Way, go Foxes! I tell you, the roof in my house in LA blew off a couple of years ago when we were. I know you don't follow soccer at all, do you? Sorry, footy.
Well done. She's back.
She's back. It blew off at 3-4 in the morning. And when I was up watching those games, oh my God, what a season! And I came home for the Everton game. That was a big thing. The town, wow, to see it just so festooned with excitement and bunting. Not since the Queen's Jubilee, I remember. Born and bred in Leicester, and didn't show any aptitude for acting until I was at a boys' prep school. Actually, it was mixed. It was called Stoneygate School, and the English mistress there, Mrs. Bennett Hunter, decided it was high time this school put on a school play, and so me and all my mates went and auditioned for this school play, and lo and behold, she gave me the lead part. And God bless her. It was a funny little piece about Dr. Barnardo's, and it centered on a group of Victorian urchins on London rooftops. It was called the Ragged School. Anyway, I played the leader of this gang of Victorian urchins called Cripple, who had a gammy leg and a makeshift crutch that they used to beat the other boys around with. And I don't remember much about we did 3 nights at the Attenborough Theatre, which is named because the 2 Attenborough boys that did rather well, their dad was dean of the university. So there's a theatre there in Victoria Park, and we did 3 nights at the Attenborough Theatre. I can see it now, isn't that something? I was about 9, not 10 even. My mum, up until the day she died, said it was the best performance I ever gave. Aww. Isn't that something? Utterly uncluttered you were, darling. Aww. And I don't remember much about the production itself. I somewhere, I think, I've still got in a box the little crippled thing, crutch that I beat the boys around, and the sort of raggedy shorts that I wore. Anyway, but I do remember this. Mrs. Bennett Hunter applying the makeup on opening night, and me sat on a stool, and her saying, as she was brushing me up, she said, "You do have impossibly high cheekbones."
She's still not wrong. She's still not wrong.
Oh, that was it, mate. That was, this is good. I like that. So that was that. Then I left Stoneygate and went to Uppingham, and they had this beautiful theatre there where, Rowan Atkinson and the Oxford Review used to come to, and the Cambridge Footlights who would come, and this amazing man, Chris Richardson, really set the fire in me.
How old were you at this point, Dom?
That would have been 12 through 17 and a half. I went back to do S levels. I was trying to get into Cambridge and didn't make it there. Low down on my UCA form was UCL. So I ended up going to UCL, and they got the Bloomsbury Theatre there. It was the Collegiate, and then it became the Bloomsbury. Yeah. So I was very fortunate in that respect that all the way up until the moment where I might decide to actually do this for a living, I was really in the vein of just really good am-dram, if you will.
Sure, but we've all got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And talking about starting somewhere, who gave you your very first review?
Well, Rowan Atkinson.
I love this story.
To drop that into the convo. Yeah, he was very friendly with Chris. Chris, helped Rowan bring that show with the character we now know as Mr. Bean, was what he was developing during the Oxford Review with Richard Curtis writing. I remember having dinner at the Lake Isle restaurant in Uppingham High Street with Richard Curtis. I was about 14, 15, something like that. Richard Curtis, Rowan Atkinson, Howard Goodall did the music. Who you
Very
know
big fan of the show.
Yeah. So, and yes, Rowan came to see. We did my leaving play was Hamlet, and I got cast as Laertes. My mother never forgave Chris Richardson for that one.
Look, you were the Victorian cripple. You can't have all the leads,
No,
Dominic.
apparently not. And he gave it to my buddy Robert Ditcham, who was the other budding actor in the school, who was very blonde, almost sort of albino blonde, and don't recently got it, my mother was saying. And anyway, if I'm going to blow my horn, in the Uppingham School Theatre, we had a magazine that came out, and Rowan wrote the review, and he waxed lyrical about me with a little more guidance and experience. Mr. Power is my real name. There was another one in another Dominic Power when I joined Equity. So I took my mother's maiden name. Anyway, Mr. Power could become a fine young actor.
Oh, have you still got the review somewhere?
I've got the original bloody magazine, mate. It's it's in my flat in London. Bless.
You should take. It's a shame you can't get, because you've got I won't say specifically where your flat is, but you've got a flat in London. You need to get it framed, I think.
I probably should, shouldn't I? Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. And look, and I used to know Rowan a bit back in the day when he was doing his one-man shows in the West End. We'd go along and always see him. Very nice man.
So would you say that Amdram was your introduction to theatre?
Well, it's school dramatics. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And my mum, it came out after my father's very premature passing.
He was Irish, wasn't he, your dad?
He was originally from Ireland. I come from quite a sort of dichotomous background. My grandfather was a lighthouse keeper.
Yeah, and I've also got
in Ireland.
Now, who was the? So I've also got your grandfather was also a brigadier and was awarded an OBE.
That's my mother's father.
It was your mother's father.
So my mother's family, quite posh. She grew up around the world with Ayers, and she was an army brat. Grew up in Singapore, in Egypt, and her father, Cornelius Keating Hill.
Oh, that's an extraordinary name.
Yeah, was a brigadier in Her Majesty's Army. Yeah, quite a name, Cornelius Keating Hill.
And why was he awarded the OBE? Was it long service?
For 2 World Wars.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So he did both.
He did. Yeah.
First and Second World War.
I remember them giving an OBE to an Australian singer. I shall say no more than that.
Fine.
And my mother being livid.
Just giving them away.
Oh, really?
And I mean, you referenced Star Trek. I mean, I hope you told the casting directors that story when you went into audition for Malcolm Reed in later years for Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh, what story?
Well, the fact that you've had, a brigadier, OBE, grandfather, military background who was in both World Wars.
Well, oddly enough, it's funny you should reference that, because I based Malcolm Reed in that show. At 17, I was a very keen cadet in the... I was an under officer in what was an extracurriculum activity. I did 2 extracurriculum activities at Uppingham. One was the theatre, and the other was the cadet force. And I was a very keen under officer. I went away to Germany on the Rhine at Osnabrück and stayed with the Scots Dragoon Guards for about 6 weeks one summer. The first vehicle I ever drove was a Chieftain tank. I had the...
Right.
I crashed it on Osnabrück High Street.
Right.
And took out a bloody telegraph pole. It made the local newspaper literally the week after. I 17-year-old driving a bloody tank down Osnabrück High Street. And it's 2 gear sticks. It's not a wheel. It's 2 sort of levers that you... And I took out the bloody telegraph pole. Anyway, I came back and I told my mum, I said, look, because, I come from this army background, and it was half thought that I might go off to Sandhurst and have a life in the army. I hated it.
Really?
I went
the discipline?
Yes, it was the shooting the guns and driving the tanks, all fun. But the actual the army life, the 6 weeks in that regiment, I looked around and went, oh, God, no, this is not for me.
And do you think that was when you decided, from your experience, obviously, from schooling, that was when you wanted to be an actor?
No, it wasn't a straight swap. No, by then, now it was like, am I going to be a lawyer, or am I going to be... I was thinking about trying to get into the diplomatic service.
I think that would have been a terrible idea.
Not very diplomatic.
I mean, you're one of my dearest friends, but you are hardly diplomatic.
I know, it would have been a tough learning curve.
I've seen you when someone gets your order wrong in a restaurant, and that is
it's world annihilation.
Yes.
That's terrible. You shouldn't. Honestly, I've been a waiter. I know how difficult it is. I did get fired from every waiting job I've ever done.
It's not what I ordered. Yeah, but it's really nice.
Dear. Anyway, you're learning way too much about me.
Sure.
So there wasn't quite such a straight swap then. Look, I just did what was expected of me in those days, and it was get your A-levels, try to go to Oxford, Cambridge, didn't get there, go to London. I got a degree in history. I was quite good at history at school. That's what I was the best at. And, it was really after I graduated, then we went traveling. My buddy Andrew and I, who'd been at school together, and he was at Bedford and I was at UCL. We went to India for a long time and came back. Then I went on that trip down the Nile, came back. And just ummed and ahed. And there was a period of sitting in a flat in Fulham Broadway, twiddling my thumbs, going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And all my buddies were putting on their suits and going down to Soho and getting jobs at Saatchi and advertising was becoming quite, that was maybe a possibility, or the city, finance. And there was a voice inside screaming like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm not going to lie. There were at least 18 months where the best my mum could boast was that I was a very well-educated waiter. Bless her. And she never bust my, chops about that.
I think we've all done that though.
I was in the, I had to be in the primordial swamp of it. And I stared at the ceiling one morning for another few hours. And I was living with a girl who was at the Royal Ballet then. And she went off early to dance every day and, was being productive. Which
makes it even worse for you.
It was killing me. A big event of the day was going out to get the paper and 10 silk cut, And
how did you survive? What jobs were you doing?
Well, a couple of bar jobs. And back in those days, back in those days, you could get housing benefit and sign on the dole for 30 quid a week, and live cheap. And that's what I did. And then a couple of bar jobs to subsidize living cheap, under the table. I don't know if you can do that anymore.
No, not really.
I don't know. I did audition to drama schools after graduating, and I got very close to Central. I definitely got to the semi-finals and didn't, and then they turned me away. Years later, a few years after, there was a drinking club in Covent Garden called Fred's. Was it Fred's? No. What was that place called? Bridges Place. And I was up there. I used to be quite a regular up there. And I was hanging out at the bar there. And this girl that was there kept looking at me because she said, I know you. Turns out later in the night, we got it all straightened out. She'd been a second-year student at Central they were responsible for ushering in the hopefuls when they, like cattle. And I'd gone back so many times to audition for this school. And I couldn't believe now, by the second, third, fourth auditions, they were giving places to boys who were you was in the same room watching them do their audition pieces, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
And could you come back again next week, Dominic? And anyway, she remembered me, bless. And I said, wow, well, yeah, I didn't get a place, and she didn't. She said, but they wrote you a letter, right? And I was like, no, what letter? She went, you're joking. I went, no. She said, oh, God, we talked about. Oh, no, because I was 23 by now, and these other young chaps were like 18, 19, 20. And they just thought, no, he's not going to stay here 3 years and he doesn't really need it. And just the letter was, get out there and go do it, son.
Crikey.
And I never got that letter. And I'll say two things about that. In some respects, glad I didn't get it because it might have swollen my head. But then the other part of that conundrum was I did carry a chip for a while because it was definitely during the time of getting into the theatre and the acting business in London where you needed the stamp of a accredited drama school. You wanted a RADA stamp or you wanted a Lambda stamp, and to get a good agent and get a good kickoff and get an equity card, you had to have a card in those days. you needed that accreditation, and I didn't get it, and I carried that around for a bit. I have to say, just to finish, in many respects, I'm glad I didn't get that formal training. Not to trounce it, and but I saw a lot of theatre at that time. One of my best friends was Jack Tinker, who took me pretty much every night to see all his opening night shows, and I'd watch him write those reviews.
Just remind
Jack Tinker was the last of his breed. He wrote overnight reviews for the Daily Mail for 25 years, I think.
Yeah.
He was an amazing man, and he was a mentor of mine. I got him to come and see a play at I was the first PR for the Pleasance Theatre, when Chris Richardson from Uppingham took that over out of town, the old university building, and everyone thought he was cray-cray. And I was his PR, and I got Jack to come and see a play by that Irish touring group, Sharabang. I tracked him down at his hotel and told him, I said, my mother's a Daily Mail reader. She'd love this play. And he came. And we became best friends after that. And he really, without Jack, I don't know if I would have become an actor. My drama school was going to pretty much 2 or 3 opening nights every night for about 18 months.
Sometimes to be told, no, you can't do something, gives you a tenacity that perhaps if you're told you're brilliant at something, you don't necessarily, you know what I mean? There's that push and pull thing. Mm-hmm. So perhaps by not having that drama school tick, that's what's made you work so hard and be so adventurous about the work that you've sought out.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's documented, so I don't mind. Back in the day, I had to get this ticket, so I was at school with a chap called Johnny Vaughan, who you probably know.
British used to do the Big Breakfast.
He used to do the Big Breakfast, and I think he's still on Capital Radio, if I'm not mistaken.
He's a radio presenter.
He's a radio presenter. Yeah. Johnny was a couple of years below me at Uppingham, and he was in the house next door to me. I bumped into him in Covent Garden. He was working at Blazer, which was a fashion little shop at the top of whatever that lane where Pineapple Dance Studios is when you come out onto Longacre. Mm-hmm. And he was standing on the doorstep smoking a fag as I was coming out of my dance class, now having decided I'm going to be an actor. And I thought, I better learn how to tap and kick a leg. So I was busying myself with that. And we were going to do a double act. This was when stand-up comedy was really sort of taking off and going to Edinburgh, and Jongleurs was getting going. And we tried to get it off the ground, a bit lazy, bit sort of haphazard.
In London, young men.
And exactly.
Lots of distractions.
With lots of distractions. And bless, there was a lovely Caribbean queen. He was John. Hi, John. Who was in my dance class at it was Martha's Beginners Jazz Ballet at 1:00. And he asked me quite early on in my, journey, would I like to do an act with him? Because the boy he'd gotten had dropped out. And I was like, well, what sort of act? He said, girl, the drag act. And I was like, no, John, darling, you're very sweet. But no, I know I'm going to be a serious actor, mate. I mean, I can't be doing. Anyway, 6 months later, Johnny and I had gotten no further to doing this double act stand-up thing. And the other boy dropped out, and John asked me again, and I just took a deep breath and went, okay, let's do it. And did 6 months of drag, and made my professional debut at the Cabaret Club in Bournemouth. I used to end up nightly in a pair of black lycra shorts with the bum cut out in red piping.
A triumph, I hear.
A triumph. I came up with a name for our group. We were called Feelings Mutual.
Feelings, yes, that's it.
Anyway, I still have those shorts. And
you've got to throw some of this shit out, Dominic.
I have, haven't I?
I bet you've got an entire attic.
Bit of a pack rat. I do have an entire attic of memorabilia. My mum sent me a good luck card to the Cabaret Club. I finally plucked up the courage to tell her what on earth I was doing. And bless her heart, the card read, break a leg, my darling boy. Here's hoping your bottom gets you to the top. God bless that lady. Patsy Power. She was a theatrical landlady, and I have met several actors who lived upstairs at my house in Leicester when my father passed away. Mum made it available for actors working at the Haymarket in Leicester. The first guy we had was Roy Hudd.
Jeez.
And he stayed there for, months. They did. He was doing Fagin in Oliver.
Yeah.
And that was the first. And then they just kept coming. And Richard O'Brien came. He premiered the first time the touring of Rocky Horror went out of London. They started in Leicester. And I bumped into him recently with you. Was that with you at the Grouch? Yeah, I think so. Maybe I was. Anyway, I went over to him. I said, I don't know if you remember. And he was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bless. So yeah, she was well known on the theatrical landlady digs list. Yeah.
Well, we'll be continuing to talk to Dominic about where those stiletto heels would lead him to, as well as all of the other wonderful stories from his life and career. But now it's time for me to pop out my theatrical tips. That's right, here are my theatrical tips of things to see and do this May 2018. Three Women, a brand new comedy drama by Katie Brand at the Trafalgar Studios. From generation to generation, from mother to daughter, this female-led play explores what it means to be a woman in the 21st century and the consequences of the generational gap on our attitudes, cultural expectations, and family dynamic. From wedding celebrations to relationship disillusionment, Three Women is a razor-sharp, funny, and caustically irresistible comedy. Starring Anita Dobson, this hilariously frank and original debut brings our three women and their very different identities and opinions into one hotel suite for a single night of redemption. What will be revealed? Plays at Trafalgar 2 from the 15th of May until the 9th of June 2018. Visit atgtickets.com for more information and to book tickets. Absolute Hell by Rodney Atkins at the National Theatre. An intoxicating plunge into bomb-blasted London. A Soho den in The Hangover from World War II, where members drink into the darkness night after night, lying, fighting, and seducing. These lost souls and bruised lovers struggle from the rubble of war towards an unknown future. It's an extraordinarily provocative play that was condemned as a libel on the British people when first performed in 1952. Joe Hill-Gibbons returns to the National Theatre to direct a large ensemble in this new production. It plays from the 30th of April until the 16th of June 2018 at the Littleton. Visit nationaltheatre.org.uk for more information and tickets. Chess, the musical, at the London Coliseum. The first West End production of Chess since 1986, starring Michael Ball, Alexandra Burke, Tim Howard, Cassidy Jansen, and Cedric Neal. Two of the world's greatest chess masters, one American, one Russian, are in a danger of becoming the pawns of the governments as their battle for the world title gets underway. Simultaneously, their lives are thrown into further confusion by a Hungarian refugee, a remarkable woman who becomes the centre of their emotional triangle. This mirrors the heightened passions of the political struggles that threaten to destroy lives and loves. Plays at the London Coliseum from the 26th of April to the 2nd of June. Visit chessthemusical.com.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatre Accounts. Hopefully you know by now that we are the go-to accountants for the entertainment industry. We're not giving out a tax tip this week, but we did enjoy giving out lots of free cake recently to celebrate the new tax year. Hopefully you are either in central London and managed to get a piece from one of our team, or you were part of the cast at one of the lucky shows that we delivered big boxes of cake to. We received plenty of thank you tweets and pictures which were gratefully received. If you were not lucky enough to receive some free cake, get in touch and we'll put you on the list for next time. We gave out well over 1,000 pieces of free cake. We like to be different. Who said accountants are boring? If you're considering an accountant for the first time, or you are thinking of moving accountants, it couldn't be easier to join us. Please get in touch for a free chat. You can get in touch with us via our website, www.theatreaccounts.co.uk, and you can follow us on Twitter @theatreaccounts. If you are a new client to us, we will also give you a discount off your first year's fee. Just quote the Show People podcast.
I'd just like to say to Theatre Accounts, Show People podcast didn't get any free cake, so a bit awkward. Anyway, for the listeners out there, we do still love them. They are an extraordinary bunch. And remember, say the Show People podcast sent you, because you'll get 50 quid off your first year's fees and a free consultation. and probably some cake.
Hi, this is Robert Duncan McNeil, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
So you have your equity card. What were your earliest theatre jobs before delving into the world of TV and film?
The first professional work I ever did, where I actually got paid to be an actor, was a wonderful play that had been a teleplay on the BBC. It was called The Best Years of Your Life. And we did it at the Man in the Moon Theatre pub down at the bottom of World's End in Chelsea there, which is no longer there now, sadly. It's now a very swanky restaurant with condominium apartments upstairs where the theatre had been. So this was its theatrical debut. It still starred Lee Whitlock, who played the part on TV. He was the young boy in Shine On Harvey Moon all those years ago.
Yeah.
So he was quite well known back in those days, dear Lee. And the play was a semi-autobiographical piece written by a lovely chap called Clive Germain, who had spinal cancer. And it was a very moving piece about an apprentice Chelsea football player that Lee played, who was struck down in the prime of life and at the beginning of what looked like a golden boots career by spinal cancer. And they lived in those tower blocks across the street at World's End in the estate there. And I played the part of the brother. His name was Mark, if I remember rightly, and it was a terrific part. And as I say, I'd been friends with Jack Tinker for about 18 months, and I'd just about met the town. Literally, I mean, there wasn't a critic I didn't know personally.
And probably not a show you hadn't seen.
And not a show I hadn't seen. I was at Joe Allen every night, God bless Jack. I mean, when I think back to how fortunate that was. But the downside for dear Jack was when I finally said to him, so I've got a part in a play, and his heart apparently was in his mouth because he'd never seen me act. And, I could tell a story at dinner.
Sure. There's no doubt.
But you don't know till the kid walks out there.
Yeah.
And of course, all the other, theatrical critics were just dying to come along and see what Jack's friend.
Yeah. I'm sure there's all sorts of rumours that was going along around
there were plenty of rumours. Jack was a gay man and I'm not. But yeah, there were plenty of, raised eyebrows on that one. Bless his heart, honestly. He was like a sort of dad to me, really. Anyway, so that little theatre had never seen so many, literally, everyone was there. Nick de Jong, Coveney, you name it. And that little theatre had never seen so many, national paper theatre critics in their little room. And
very intimidating for you, just going back to, as a young actor, you haven't had your formal training. You've got by learning. I
honestly remember. I knew it was a good play. The script was great. We had a great director, and Lee and I got on well. And I just knew that we had something good here, and we killed it. If I can, without sounding too whatever, we just killed it. And there wasn't a dry eye in that house for 6 weeks. And it was an amazing experience. I never looked back. And got my first proper agent out of that. And I was being represented at the time, but not very well, by a respectable agent too, who advised me not to do this play because there was no money in it.
Look, some agents work with some actors, some they don't. At the end of the day, it's just a relationship. And some, I've gone through my agents. I'm happy with the one I've got, but right at the beginning, it's no disrespect to you or
this
the
guy,
agent.
I now realise he just wasn't, unless it had some pound signs at the end of it, he just wasn't interested. And, and he wasn't particularly interested in sort of having you do something like this to forge a career. It just wasn't his wheelhouse, let's put it that way. And so I luckily met someone, actually it was through Lee. Lee was represented by, gosh, I'm blanking. Lee was represented by Jeremy Conway. Mm-hmm. Lee was represented by Jeremy Conway, who came to see the play and did toy with taking me on, but he was engineering. I remember him saying to me at the interview when I went to see see him in his offices, he was engineering Helen HBC, as we affectionately called her, Helena Bonham Carter. And
Whatever happened to her.
Whatever happened to her. And Ken Branagh's meteoric careers. And he just said, look, I just don't think I've got the time to dedicate to you at this point. But he sent me this lovely young lady, Roxanne Vacker, who was leaving ICM and setting up on her own. And she took me on, and that was when I sort of really got things going from there, really. So I don't know how we got onto, but yeah, that was the beginning of it, having gotten the equity card. And then quite quickly, I did, quite quickly after that, that's right, we did Screamers with Tim Spall, which was an amazing piece that went up to Edinburgh. And we out of nowhere, we were the hit show in town that year. And it was an extraordinary play about growing up gay in the 1960s in London, pre-Wolfenden Report.
Yeah.
And I got to play this wonderful character, Rodney, who was the young apprentice hairdresser at the Cut and Come Again salon in Tooting. And Tim played this sort of chief charge hand there. And it was a wonderful autobiographical piece by a man called Anthony Davidson, who'd been at RADA with Tim. And this was really one from the heart. And we just killed. You couldn't get a seat to see this play. We played at the Playhouse up there, and that was it. I never really looked back. I got Desmond's out of that. That was Trix Worrell came back at the bar after. I mean, so many people came up to me at the end of that show and said, "Go, can I buy you a drink?"
But also, looking at this, I mean, because we'll get on to Desmond's as we're in this sort of category of theatre. One of the first conversations when you and I were getting to know each other, which just came out. I'm so thankful that for whatever reason you came out with that, and I was talking about theatre, and we just went, "What?" The original Cosmo in Philip Ridley's the premiere of a Pitchfork Disney at the Bush Theatre.
Yeah, that was Philip's first play, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He'd done some radio stuff, I think. Maybe, I think that was his first play.
I mean, it was certainly a seminal play.
Oh,
you know?
I mean, people didn't know what they were looking at. When we read it, we didn't know what we were. I mean, I didn't know what to think. It had Rupert Graves in it, and I was quite excited by that. That he was a bit of a name, Rupert, and Tilly Vosborough, who I had known. I was quite friendly with the North London acting set by now because of Lee. Doing that play with Lee, he was part of that Red Lion group, and I'd met a lot of them up there in the pub. And then meeting Tilly, and got to meet Kathy Burke, who I ended up doing a play with amongst Barbarians. She played my sister. And so I was part of that, part of that group at this point in time. And it was without doubt, it was a seminal piece. And I mean, I was that very fortunate, man. I mean, all those plays I did out of nowhere, they became monster hits.
But not only that,
we got extended at the Bush there. And
because there's reports of the original production that, famously, of course, the cockroach eating scene, which we've said in the pub together before. I find it amazing that there are reports of audience members fainting or vomiting or walking out the auditorium because of it, and yet now we turn on the television and watch I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here,
eating
and you see
all sorts of insectual
Anthea Turner and 1,000 cockroaches. But you must have felt on a razor edge in regards to cutting edge theatre, being a part of that company. And working with Philip on that, let's be honest, game-changing play.
I don't know that I did. I mean, I loved playing Cosmo. I loved, with Matthew Lloyd's help. He was a terrific director, Matthew. It was very exciting creating that role. It was a splashy part. I had my hair dyed peroxide blonde for it. That was, I mean, I had this red spangled jacket. It was just a show-stopping part, man. And, and then that moment with the cockroach, and I slightly let my hand shake, so it looked like the thing was wriggling.
So it's your fault.
All smoke and mirrors, love.
It's your fault they were vomiting all over the auditorium.
It was. And I don't know that I remember thinking at the time, wow, we're really breaking new ground here. I don't know. I don't often think like that as an actor. Maybe I should. But we had the three of us got on very well indeed. There was a lot of support between Tilly and Rupert and myself, and then Matthew and Philip too. Philip was great, and he was so excited to see this thing come alive. And it took a lot of work. I remember that it didn't come easy because it could have been fucking tedious. Frankly, there was long monologues in it, and extraordinary sort of dystopian. What is this? Why are they eating chocolate and why have they barricaded? A lot of, quite frankly, stuff that you couldn't really make linear sense of. But somehow, as a theatrical experience, it was immersive and
giving a voice to a working class type of person that just wasn't on our stages.
Agreed. There you go. I hadn't, there you go. So I'd not thought that. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, I really hope you're proud of it because
I am. I mean, it makes me feel a bit old, but I've come across a couple of people now that have gone, "You were Cosmo?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
mainly me dragging them over and going, "You must meet Dominic."
Yeah, well, yeah, you two, and I was at lunch the other day with a young actress who was like, and look, it feels great. I mean, I was very lucky. Those early plays, Amongst Barbarians, that we did, that came down from Manchester, when we went to Hampstead after that and did an extended run, and when Hampstead had their 50th year anniversary, they called me up and said, "Would you come in? Kathy Burke is directing a young cast in the play. There's going to be a reading," and it was amazing to see some young London chap playing me 27 years later or something. God. Yeah. Anyway, very fortunate. I haven't done a play, and it's horrific to say this out loud. It's been over 20 years. I did a play when I first got to Los Angeles with Adam Faith. I know, of all people. He was coming over. He was being represented by a woman there called Melanie Green, who handles all the big English careers in town, amongst others, David Duchovny's. And this was his showcase at what was the Tiffany Theatre on Sunset Boulevard that's no longer there. And I got to play Arthur and taught Adam how to rollerblade, him and his daughter. His daughter directed it. And they were keen to learn how to rollerblade, and I was a massive rollerblader back in those days. And anyway, so I haven't done a play since then. It's been a long, long, long time.
But you are planning on coming back?
I'd love to. I want
spending more time in the UK.
I'm going to come back to England more. I think by this time next year, I'll be spending more time in London than Los Angeles, and I've got a great new guy looking after me here, and we'll see how it maps out. But give it a last one college try.
Well, I will be very proud of you, and it's lovely to have you back home. I'm going to be talking to Dominic about two very long-running shows, both Desmond's, which he cut his teeth in as a young actor in television, as well as Star Trek Enterprise, the fifth incarnation of Star Trek based upon the works of Gene Roddenberry. Stay tuned.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about quite an iconic British television series, which, funnily enough, is or has been recently shown on London Live. I think I texted you and was like, I've just been looking at a very young Dominic Keating. Desmond's.
Gorgeous, that was.
Tell me, so for younger listeners who may not have seen it, tell us what made Desmond's such an important TV show in Britain at the time.
It was pretty seminal. This was ostensibly a black TV show, if you want to give it a label. A black cast. It was set around a West Indian barber shop in Peckham in South London. And there were one or two white characters. The daughter had a best friend that was played by Lisa Gagan, who went on to do The Bill for many years. And myself, who was the son's good friend. The son was a bank manager. The shop was failing somewhat miserably. They lived above the shop, the family. Norman Beaton played the father and chief hair stylist, hair cutter.
Barber. Yeah.
Barber, there we go. And in order that the son was going to invest in the family business and, bring it out of the doldrums, he insisted that he bring in his boy Tony, who I played, to do all the modern cuts, to bring the shop kicking and screaming into the late 1980s.
Yeah.
But it was a great part, and we ran for 5 years, man. And without doubt, it was the first time a black show, if you will, on Channel 4 crossed over into the imagination of just England's, viewing public, and two white boys in a white van were just as likely to scream out at me, "Oi, Tony!" as walking down the Portobello Road, whereabouts I bought my flat, as all the Rasta boys would go, "Yeah, man." I was actually living in Clapham North when I first did that first show, and it aired. I remember the night I used to go and swim at Brixton Wreck every morning. And I came out the pool that morning with my buddy who lived next door to me in Clapham North, and we were in the showers, and there was a school of kids there, mostly little black lads in the shower, and one of them looked at and went, "You coming Desmond's last night?" Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, oh,
where's my towel? Where's my bloody towel?
The power of TV, dude. Yeah, it was quite something. And it was it really did. It broke a lot of the ceiling of up until then, not to be too disparaging, but, black shows had been kind of...
But they hadn't existed.
They had, and if they had, they were racist. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
They were pretty damaging, and
very much made for a white audience's perception of
making fun of black people, frankly. And this was not that. And Norman and Carmen Munro and Ram John Holder and Robbie G and I'm not going to name everybody.
There are credits, people. Look it up.
They changed. We changed the face of it and of how it was perceived, and it was an amazing time in my life to be a part of something so seminal. We shot at LWT, which, as you told me last night, we walked past there last night, and it's no longer going to be there. We shot next to the Blind Date studio with Scylla in every Friday night, which was super exciting. I was always trying to persuade one of the contestants to, I've only got a couple of lines, just honestly, they won't know. Let me swap with me.
We've got the lovely Dominic.
Yeah.
Hello. And of course, I have to ask you about it, but I've purposely, with this interview, look, the podcast is for the performing arts industry. People who listen to this show know I'm a great fan of science fiction. Then you get a role in, let's say what it is, one of, or if not the biggest television franchises in the world. The Star Trek franchise
it's the biggest.
I mean,
it's without doubt.
To go from such a working class, fabulous, gritty comedy, working class world, as it were, to then be dealing with the multi-million pound Paramount Pictures, one of the three leads, essentially, yourself, Connor Trenier, Scott Bakula, I would argue, was sort of the Spock, McCoy, Kirk sort of
and
triangle.
Jolene playing to Paul. That was the sort of triumvirate. That was the push. And then, I elbowed out a very nice little... literally, that's what you kind of had to do. I mean, when the thrust of the show was Connor Trenier and Scott Bakula as the captain and Jolene as to Paul. And yet, then I managed to find a very, flesh out a nice. They hadn't really, look at that point. Those writers in Hollywood, I take my hat off to these guys, man, and how they create these shows on the fly. They have a general idea, but week by week,
you do it, they watch it, see what they like, and then write some more.
Pretty much,
yeah.
And what they see, they write for, and I managed to give them something to write for. So it was a very exciting time, and and to be given as much as I did get given, because I thought maybe I was going to just be, the British guy that said some British things once in a while. I'd seen the shows before, so I knew that, not everyone got to be one of the main characters. So I was very happy with how it mapped out. And, I definitely got good episodes, and invariably I became the action man on that show, which was so startling to me. The captain would invariably screw up again.
Yeah.
And we better send Malcolm to...
Because rather gorgeously, I think it was... I can't remember the episode, but you had Guy Siner as your father as well, didn't you?
I did. Guy and I were very old friends from me having arrived in LA. Bless him. I met him.
Did you get him into the show?
I got him the job. I mean, not to sound whatever, but I suggested Guy to play my dad and Jane Carr to play my mum, and they went with both of them. And I tell you what, when I think about that, they were very, very lovely to me, those producers on that show. Being British, they kind of took me... I don't know how to say it, more seriously, but I mean, they were absolute prima donnas about what they'd written. I remember doing one of my early big speeches on the first week of shooting. I nailed that. And Jan, the supervising script editor, came over and said, Dominic, and the director went, so we'll go again. And she said, so Dominic, you said and instead of of, instead of but instead of if. And I was like, you gotta be kidding, right? She went, not on this show. And sure as SH1T, they were taskmasters for what they'd written. Every full stop and every comma was intended. So, but with me, God bless them, I could ring them up, being the British guy, and say, British guy would never say that. Well, what would he say, Dominic?
Are you trying to say that you might have just taken the piss?
No, I made...
I mean, there weren't any terrible things like...
I just wrote better lines now and again, and more of them.
There wasn't things like, I'm just popping down to engineering to get myself a brew kind of nonsense.
No. And if they had, early on in the audition process, I had to go back and meet the director who was going to do the pilot 2 episodes, Jim Conway. And at that meeting in Rick Berman's offices, he's so Dominic, we've asked you a lot of questions. Is there anything you'd like to ask us? And I was like... Well, since you ask, Malcolm. They looked at me quizzically, and I said, well, it's, Malcolm. I mean, it's just such a sort of, LA American writer's idea of a British bloke's name, Duncan, Malcolm, and Rick Berman.
I quite like it.
Well, Rick Berman looked at me because... Well, what would you suggest, Dominic? I said, well, let's face it.
Dave.
I said, what about Simon or something? I said, I don't particularly look like a Malcolm, do I? And he looked at me, and I got this real quick. He went, that's funny because we thought you did. And I was like,
it's fine.
Shut up.
Yep, shut
Call
up.
me Shirley.
Yep.
Yeah. I would learn that. I was like, oh, you're working for the man, dude.
Now, there was something which I think is a real shame. We've spoken about this before. Because, of course, I know there's all of the general questions that you've ever been asked about what it was like to work on the sound stages and the iconic episodes. All of that is, listeners, all of that is on YouTube. But something which would have been, would have been quite important to me, actually, was the idea that Malcolm Reed could have been the first gay character in Star Trek.
There was a
rumor. Way ahead of Anthony Rapp. And as a diehard fan of the show, as a kid who grew up when he was gay and went, oh, great, gay people aren't in the 24th century. Where the hell did we go? Uranus, and then there was the thing that there was that. Take me through the actual story of Malcolm's possible, homosexuality and the shenanigans that followed.
Well, it was, I wore a dress to the film.
A lovely red wraparound, yes.
It was red. The red skirt. Red
alert, yes.
He was, they give you a 3-line bio that as an actor you get to read before you go into audition. And mine said, stiff, upper-lipped, Brit, button-down collar, shy around women. And dare I say it, shy around women was dragged out a little too far
Yeah.
by the gay frat. And so they all thought that was, the precursor to this being a gay character. I remember standing in what's Mayfair Market on Franklin Avenue in Hollywood, just where I was living, I still do. And they have at the stand there the TV guides, and there we were as a cast on the front page on the TV guide. There was us. So I picked it out of the stand and sort of ceremoniously looked at it and flicked through, and I was a British actor, Dominic Keating, will be joining the cast, reputedly, aged 57, the first gay character on Star Trek. I was like, I nearly dropped my sushi.
Yeah.
So I get home and I ring up Brannon Braga, who was the executive producer and, had been running the shows for a long time. I said, Brannon, hey, Dominic, I just was at Mayfair Market. I saw the TV guide with that photo shoot we did, and it was very good. That's great. I said, so reading the blurb, what's this about Malcolm going to be the first gay character on Star Trek? Now, bear in mind, I told you I've played some gay characters in my career, not a big deal, but it's just fairly,
yeah, and you've got tons. I mean, both historically and now.
This is a big platform, though, and it's I'm like and no one told me. So he goes, God bless that man. I tell you, I said, so what's this about him being the first gay character on Star Trek? And he paused and he went, it's going to be amazing. And I'm like, okay. He said, we're going to out him in October. You'll be on the front page of The Advocate. And I'm like, the what now? He goes, you don't know The Advocate? And I went, no, I don't know The Advocate. He goes, oh, Dominic, it's the largest gay publication in the world. And I swear to God, he must have heard the pennies just going in my head as I went, okay, I could do that. Yeah. This will be big.
And not only that, I think it would have, hey, look, as I've spoken about on this show before, what comfort it would have brought countless children and young kids growing up.
They weren't.
And do you know what?
They weren't ready to do it yet.
No, they weren't.
No, but look, I mean, Brannon didn't get to write his AIDS episode until the 4th season of our show, and he wanted to do it back at the beginning of, I think maybe at the end of Next Gen, or certainly the beginning of Deep Space or Voyager. Yeah. He'd been banging on to the higher ups at Paramount to do that episode.
Yeah.
And no disrespect, but frankly, by the time we did that episode, it was kind of too late.
It was curtains.
And it was a bit, and it was so dilutive and diluted and just, it didn't have any teeth.
Yeah.
And it was almost an afterthought by the time we did do it, frankly. And so, they weren't ready for that.
But also, and again, I'm not wanting to go into to ground that you've covered before, but here you are, originally an actor with no training, no agent, no equity card, and here you are being beamed, pun intended, all around the world in one of the biggest shows that's ever put out from America. You're on magazines, you're action figures, you're in games, you've got a beautiful home in LA. How did you not get swallowed up by the fame, the fortune? How are you still here? Rather than, sadly, plenty of people who get those opportunities who are not with us anymore or haven't got any of that stuff left because they spunked it all up the wall.
Yeah, I've always been a smart actor. I got taught a lesson early on. I did some commercial in London and went out spending on account of all the residuals I was going to make, got the new boots and the jacket and, a couple of dinners here and some champagne for that bird. And then lo and behold, I saw the commercial and I'd been cut out of it.
Oh, darling, can I just take those back?
So that was a bit of a don't spend any of the money till it's in the bank. And even then, think twice, frankly, unless you become a bona fide, breakout star, who knows? There's Jeremy Conway said to me at that meeting, know this, there are always going to be times in your career when you're just not offered any work.
Yeah.
Unless you really do make it to the hallowed grounds of being a absolutely rock solid no holes barred named actor that they're trying to get.
Yeah.
And there's the eye of that needle is tiny. So if you're a working actor, I mean, that's why when I set my sail to do this thing, and I was fairly late on. I mean, I was, 23, 4, something, when I woke up and said, I want to be an actor. I remember padding through to the phone in that little flat in Fulham Broadway and picking up the phone and ringing directory inquiries and saying, I want to be an actor. I need the numbers of some drama school. I can only give you 2. You'll have to call back for the others. That's how it started. But so I resigned myself at that point to, rented accommodation and a crappy car at best for the rest of my days. And God bless, as you outlined now. I mean, it's been a lot better than that. It really has. And I pinch myself on account. Thank you.
Hi, this is David Bedella, and you're listening to the Show People Podcast with Andrew Keates.
It's time for the Show People podcast platform, the part of the show where we give some well-earned exposure to any playwright, composer or artist to share their original work with our listeners. Today's platform is given to a friend of mine and Arian Productions in Alexis Gerard, who appeared in our 2013 European premiere of Paul Scott Goodman and Miriam Gordon's Rooms, a Rock Romance. He's played many leading roles in the West End and beyond, and is aiming to release his debut album with the help of a crowdfunding campaign. Alexis, who reached the live... that's going to be a problem. Alexis, who reached the live... Guys, this is brilliant. So I have an Alexa device in the... Okay. I wonder how many thousands of people's Alexas have gone off. Alexis, with 10... where am I? Alexis, who reached the live semi-finals of BBC One's Let It Shine, as well as appearing in Our House, American Idiot and Dreamboats and Petticoats, to name a few, is appealing to fans and supporters to help him cover some of the cost of producing and releasing a record packed with songs he has written over the course of his career. With 10 songs written and 2 already recorded and an experienced producer on board, Alexis aims to raise Alexa, I'm going to kill you. Alexis aims to raise 4,500 quid through his crowdfunding appeal, with all pledges going...
I don't know that one.
I mean, I love Alexis Gerard, but I should have maybe turned her off. I'm going to leave it in, though. I'm going to leave it in.
Oh, it's great.
I just like the idea of the thousands of Alexas that are going off. Anyway, with 10 songs written and 2 already recorded and an experienced producer on board, Alexis aims to raise 4,500 quid through his crowdfunding appeal, with all pledges going directly towards producers' fees, recording, mixing, mastering, CD duplication, merchandise and other associated costs. To coincide with the launch of the crowdfunding campaign, Alexis has released Sweet Angel, which is what we're going to play for you on today's show. Originally written as a thank you to his parents for their support and guidance, Alexis says it now also reflects how he wishes to bring up his own children.
I'm just
going to play it now. Here is Sweet Angel, written and performed by Alexis Gerard.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
Turn the light on. I could see your face as pale as white. Free fall or crash back to life. But I'm here to show you that colors fade, but the warm shade still stain the wall. I know you may find it hard and ask for reason. I know you're falling. I say you're falling deeper down. I'll show you how to fly with broken wings. Sweet angel. Open your eyes. Let me guide you through the windy path. No more sad songs to echo life. Let the rhythm take you back. Colors fade, but the warm shades will stain the down. I'll show you how to fly with broken wings. Sweet angel, I'll see you crawling. I'll see you holding on the ground. I'll pick you up and fly with broken wings. Sweet angel, sweet angel, sweet angel.
For full details of Alexis' crowdfunding campaign and his debut album, please just visit www.alexisjarrett.co.uk or follow him on Twitter at Alexis Jared. Are you a writer or composer or artist who creates original work? Well, I want to hear from you. Please send any recordings that you have with full permission to use on the show, along with some information about yourself and the work you do, to info@arian-productions.com, as we're passionate about supporting new work and sharing it with our loyal listeners.
Hi, I'm Alexis Jared, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the brilliant Andrew Keates. And I mean that, and not just because he slipped me a cheeky 20.
Now, Mr. Keating, it's come to my favourite things. Dominic Keating, I'm going to strand you on the Xindi homeworld. That's a Star Trek reference, everybody, in case you didn't get it. And I want to know what you would need to survive in your shuttle pod. You already have a copy of the complete works of William Shakespeare and the Bible.
Oh, that's going to be helpful.
Yes, because you're so virtuous. What would you need to survive, starting with your favourite album?
Favorite album? Gosh. I would say, because it was the first one I ever bought, Houses of the Holy by Led Zepp.
Oh, nice choice.
Yeah, I was about 12, 13 years old. That was the first one I bought. Yeah.
And this is going to be, I think this is going to be a tough one for you. What about the film? Because you're a film buff. You know your
I
film.
do know my films, and I think, and it is not particularly original, but I gotta say, I think Some Like It Hot is, if you can't really go wrong. It just makes you laugh every time, and the performances are so wonderful, and Marilyn's so lovely, and
Jack Lemmon,
and the director. It's a fantastically made movie, and you can't beat it. Tony Curtis is fantastic in that film. It's just it's like I say, it's not utterly original, but it would certainly save me from slitting whatever in the said shuttle pod.
And what would be the book?
The book, crikey. There was a couple of books, and I'm struggling. Arthur and George by and he's from my hometown. What's that writer's name? You're going to have to look this up. Can we?
Alexa.
Yes.
Who wrote? What was it called?
Arthur and George.
Arthur and George's author is Julian Barnes.
Julian Barnes.
Thanks, Alexa.
Fantastic.
Now she comes in helpful.
He's a much renowned writer, and he's from my hometown too. He grew up around the corner from my mum's house. Anyway, that's a beautiful story. Do you know it?
No, I don't.
It's a true story about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who helped a poor Indian gentleman who was accused of all sorts of strange, I don't know what you call, what is animal murders, something inside, animal centicide, I don't know what you call it, but it was a true story, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle came to this man's rescue. He was up from Yorkshire, in the wilds of Yorkshire, and the story that Julian weaves is told as if it's almost a Sherlock Holmesian
that's
story.
brilliant.
It's very clever. And I remember reading this book twice, with literally as I put it, I finished the last page and then I read it again. I think I could take that. Or Geoffrey Eugenides. Have you ever read Middlesex?
No, you mentioned this to me
It's an
a while
extraordinary
back.
piece. It really is. I could quite happily take that too. Yeah, you'd love it. You'd love Middlesex.
And what would be the play?
Crikey. What would be the play? Do you know, the first play that I ever saw that my mum took me to at the Haymarket Theatre was How the Other Half Loves by Alan Ayckbourn.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Yeah.
Good giggle.
And the musical?
The musical. I haven't seen Hamilton. I understand it's amazing. I grew up on. I grew up on the likes of Oklahoma. They all came to stay at my mum's house, as I said. But perhaps Rocky Horror. It's not Oklahoma. Let's go. Let's go with Damn It, Janet.
Well, that's going to keep me very, very happy. And, you never know. You might be able to maybe recreate that, a slightly older drag queen. Actually, you might not be a bad...
Do you know what? I'd be a bloody good Frankenfurter, wouldn't I?
I mean, that would be... Hey...
Put on a couple of pounds.
This is the answer. If you are stranded on said Zindie homeworld with the Rocky Horror Picture Show, perhaps that's what happens to Malcolm Reed. He goes on to have a great career entertaining the Zindie as a great drag queen.
To all the crabs.
next time we see Brannon Braga, we'll come up with a short film.
No, I tell you, it's right in his wheelhouse.
I'll direct.
There's a lot of stuff you don't know about him, people.
This is Liam Tamney, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. I see you shiver with anticipation.
Well, it's come to everyone's favourite part of the show, which is Funny 5 Minutes. Dominic Keating, you must answer all the questions I'm about to ask you as quickly as possible within the next 5 minutes. You are, however, allowed 3 passes. So use them wisely because you never know what I'm going to ask. Dominic Keating, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Dominic Keating, what is your favourite theatre?
Maybe the Haymarket in Leicester because it's where I was born.
What's your favourite season?
Spring.
Do you have a favourite sport?
Soccer. Footy.
Footy, thank you very much. She's back in the UK. If someone narrated your life, who would it be?
Derek Jacobi. Sir Derek Jacobi.
What's your favourite television show on right now?
The Crown.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Oh, a horse-sized duck.
And the reason for that?
It'd be bloody funny.
It'd be great fun. Who was your teenage crush?
Crikey, Catherine Ross.
Who would play you in a movie about your life?
Who would it be? Matt Damon.
He says humbly. Where is the strangest place you've ever had a wee?
A what? A wee?
A wee.
Oh gosh, I wee everywhere.
It's like a terrier.
Crikey, I'm sure in someone's sink somewhere.
Probably mine when I've been in the shower. Who is the most famous person you've ever met?
Maybe. Well, that's one of 2. I've met Brangelina together, and they're all Bill Gates. So take your pick.
Ooh.
Right up there.
Do you believe in aliens?
Yeah.
How many pairs of shoes do you own?
Gosh, it's got to be hit the 50 mark.
Have you really got 50
I
shoes?
would say. I mean, between the flat in London and the house in LA, I know there are shoes up in my attic in London, dude.
Cats or dogs?
Oh, I'm a cat person, but I love dogs. I had 2 cats. I have one now. One left us.
If you were to order a pizza, what would be your toppings?
I'm a pretty straight pizza ordering dude. Just cheese and some tomatoes. Gosh,
what's happened to you?
What's happened to me? Just not too much. Not too much bump. I'm a very simple pizza ordering person.
Sum Donald Trump up in one word.
Is that a word? I mean, and schizoid frenzy, dangerous.
What's the most unusual thing you've ever had in your mouth?
Gosh, I have no idea what to say to that. The strangest thing I've ever had in my mouth. Pretend cockroach.
Pretend cockroach. Oh, and there was me just hoping that there was some sort of sweet. What was the cockroach made out of?
I think they were made out of some sort of licorice. It was a licorice thing. I'm just like, gosh, that came out from nowhere. Wow, it was licorice.
Would you ever like to swim with sharks?
No, surfer. God, no, you can't even say that word.
What are the best kind of pants?
You mean knickers?
Yeah.
I like briefs more than boxers. I like the boxer brief best.
Like just a little cupping. Just
Yes, and a little half a trouser to it.
Do you think a swan could actually break someone's arm?
Yeah, I bet it could. They're
Really?
probably quite strong.
You think so?
Oh, I'm one of those when it pecks you. It could break your wrist if it got in the right place.
But not an entire arm. I mean, that's got to be quite a...
All right, fair enough.
So that's a fact, listeners. We do not believe that swans can break.
I bet it's documented somewhere they've broken. Are we going to have an argument about this?
We can do. We can. Right.
Alexa?
Can swans break people's arms?
Sorry, I don't know that.
Well, no. Well, listeners, if you know...
If she doesn't know.
Has a swan ever broken your arm, please, do get in touch. Well, sadly, that noise tells me that is all the time that we have left. But before we go, there is still time to squeeze in a few parish notices. Firstly, well done to everyone who made it onto our May 2018 theatrical tips. Good luck to Alexis Jared with the crowdfunding campaign for his debut album. But most importantly, please sound that read alert for the one, the only, Mr. Dominic Keating.
Hey!
Dominic, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Just let our listeners know, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to?
DominicKeating.com's not a bad way. And then just keep watching your screens, people. And trust me, I'll let you know when I'm doing something.
And he's also on Instagram and Twitter at IDomKnow.
Correct.
So again, all of those links will be in the Show People podcast show notes. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew Keates. You can follow the show at Show People UK and use hashtag Show People Podcast. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com or like the Show People Facebook page at facebook.com/showpeoplepodcast, where you can join the Show People Podcast Listeners Forum and talk with other people who listen to the show. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. If you would like to support the show, then please do consider making a donation at www.arian-productions.com/donate. Or you can also purchase some of our brand new Show People Podcast listeners merchandise. We can get a Show People Podcast mug and pen. Well done especially to Lee Ellaway at the Pauline Quirk Academy for his rather marvellous picture that he posted recently posing with our marvellous goods. Get yours at www.arian-productions.com/shop. Finally, we've been really bowled over by the sheer thousands of downloads the show has been receiving. If you wouldn't mind, please just take a few seconds after this podcast is finished by leaving us an iTunes review, as that really does help our rankings and helps us reach more people passionate about the performing arts and their craft. Until next time, show people, just be better.
Here's hoping your bottom gets you to the top. God bless that lady. Passy power.